Have our next speaker coming on. His name is Luciano Calestini. He's the biggest Michael Jackson fan, so maybe he will see some moves on the stage. And he's the deputy representative of Unicef on Lebanon. So Luciano, come on stage.
All right, everybody left.
They're gonna come in. Don't
Everybody
worry.
left.
It's in and out, in and out.
And I noticed you didn't.
Welcome.
You didn't say I was very beautiful as well when you were introducing me, but
Sorry.
I'm not taking it personally. That's
Good
fine.
luck.
I'm gonna put these on the floor because I'm getting senile, and if I don't, I'll forget stuff. Yeah. There's only 10 of them. All right. There we go. Look at that. So that's the subject today. I mean, it's unbelievable to be here. There are so many titans of technology and captains of industry, and I'm neither of those, that's for sure. So I'm not even going to attempt to compete with what they're talking about, because I'm just a guy from Unicef that works with many, many partners trying to advance the cause of children. So we come from a very humble place. But what struck me as I walked in is, one, how many people are in this massive amphitheater, and how many different places all those people must be from, including every corner of Lebanon, I'm sure. So maybe just to start, can I get a shout out from everyone who came here today from Wadi Khalid? Wadi Khalid, come on. You're lying. I know you're not from Wadi Khalid. What about if we go further south? Who came here today from Hula? Who's here from Hula? All right, we'll keep trying. Does anyone know where Farsabat is in the Bekaa? Farsabat. Anyone from Farsabat? No. It's a tough crowd. Huh? Let's try a bit closer to home. Just down the road. Borj Al Burajni. Who's here from Borj Al Burajni today? Nobody. All right. Who's here from Ashrafia? Excellent. All right, that's good. And that is the point, yeah? I mean, innovation in UNICEF goes back a long way, decades and decades. We only started calling it innovation pretty recently when it became quite fashionable. Before, we used to call it going to work, yeah? And when we went to work back 20, 30 years ago, long before I ever started at UNICEF, we were inventing things like ORS. Anyone's heard of ORS? No? ORS, it's a solution of salt and sugar, and it comes in a little sachet, and when you're dehydrated severely because you have, for example, cholera, you just sprinkle it in some water and you drink it and it rehydrates you. It saved millions and millions of lives around the world. Back in the old days, I think if that was today, we would call that an innovation. Back then, we just called it ORS. School in a box is another classic example back in the day, in the old days of UNICEF, when you had situations of crisis and children and families running for their lives and finding themselves in often foreign lands, and you had all these children who were out of school all of a sudden. And what you do, you ship in a school in a box, which is literally a box full of stuff, including pens and pencils and notebooks and chalk and blackboard. And it seems like a very simple idea, but that revolutionized how education was delivered to children in emergencies, especially in refugee or displacement settings. Anyone here heard of the CRC? I know this is very UNICEF-y. What's the CRC? Louder? So it's the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's the most ratified piece of international law in human history. And it was a massive innovation because for the first time, it listed all the 54 rights of children that every government around the world has to sign up for, or should sign up for. 196 have signed up. There's only one missing. That's a subject for a different talk. But the point is that this kind of innovation also sets the stage for many others. If we fast forward to 2016, then innovation often takes a more technological flavor, I think. And certainly at Unicef, when you hear the word now innovation, there's an automatic mental jump to technology, which is not always the case, but it can be. In Nigeria, birth registration, when you have a baby, instead of lining up now at your local municipal office and then taking a document and then going somewhere else and giving it to someone else who has to fill in a form, and then that form gets sent to Abuja or Lagos and gets lost, etc., etc. You can do it all by mobile phone now. That is an amazing innovation to protect children's rights. In Malawi, if you take a blood test, if you want to check if you're HIV positive or not, in the old days, that test in that vial would bump along an old dirt road, maybe take 4, 5, 6 days to get to the place, the laboratory where it's actually tested, and then the results would have to come all the way back to the village again, and maybe that would take 3 months, and by then maybe it's too late, yeah? We're sending blood tests by drone, flying all over Malawi these days, which is an incredible innovation that saves time and in the end saves lives. Right here in Lebanon, there's an innovation that's very close to UNICEF's heart, and it's one we've been working on with the Ministry of Education for now 3 years. It's called RACE, which stands for Reaching All Children with Education. 3 years ago, there were 300,000 primary school-age children in Lebanon not in school. 300,000 primary school-age children not in school. Today, we have about 200 of those in school, and the big innovation, let's say, around how that happened was that public schools opened their doors to all those children, and many of them even started a second shift to fit everybody in. That's something that we may not normally equate with innovation, but for us is one that has protected the lives and futures of hundreds of thousands of children. I think the big lesson in all of these examples from all around the world, and there are now literally hundreds of examples of innovation within UNICEF and other UN agencies, is 4 main principles that have now sort of come to the surface. One is that you have to put the user of the innovation in the middle of the innovation. We have learned the hard way that once you try to innovate for someone else, usually after a little while, the thing just crashes and burns. So putting the user who knows their situation better than anybody at the center of that effort is critical. The word ecosystem, I've already seen it on many posters around, and we use it a lot, this word. We throw it around. Tapping into what is in the local ecosystem is crucial. So often, and I freely admit this among the international community, among the UN family, there is a temptation to import expertise and knowledge and know-how into a setting. It's not the case. You don't always need to do that. In a place like Lebanon, my goodness, it's a place that is incredibly self-reliant when it comes to creativity and resourcefulness and ideas. And so tapping into this local ecosystem is a really important principle of innovation for UNICEF. Open source. Everything we do is in the public domain. Nothing is proprietary. And why we have taken that as an organizational decision is because we want everything to be for the public good. Sometimes that knowledge will be used by a for-profit, and they will run with it, and that's fine. And sometimes it will be used by a community-based organization who will take those ideas, even take the code for the applications that are developed, and we encourage that. Everything is out there, and it's for the public good, and children all around the world ultimately will be better off for that freedom. And the last is scale, meaning it's great if it works like this, but it's much better if it works everywhere. So if that idea can be taken to scale, that's another big tick on why that idea should be pursued. Here in Lebanon, we have a youth crisis right now, and Leila, I think, touched on many aspects of this in her presentation. We have, in a country that, depending on which numbers you believe, around 6 million people. There are around 6 million people in Lebanon today. An extra 1.5 or so, obviously, because of the Syrian crisis. Of that 6 million people, we have 520,000 young people at risk, in places like Wadi Khaled and Hula and Farsabat and Borj al Borajni and all the other places where people did not get to come from to be with us here today. Those young people are at risk from being excluded. They are at massive risk from being unemployed. Those communities have unemployment rates of 50, 60, 70% sometimes among young people. You have some of the most severe types of abuse and exploitation of young people happening in this country today as we are sitting here. I was in Akkar a few months ago, and this is one case of thousands. I met a young girl, let's call her Noor. She was 13 years old. She had already been married. She'd already been divorced. And the day after I met her, she was going to be married again. Yeah? And this is not Noor's issue. This is our collective issue, and what circumstances and what choices her family were obliged to make, what cultural norms her community had pushed to get Noor to this point of utter despair. And why is this happening to me? And how can I get out of this trap? At the most severe end, there are young men, 15, 16, 17 years old, who have been sitting in a field in the Bekaa, living under a piece of plastic for the last 4 years, lost all hope of going to school, and when they get a phone call from someone suggesting that they come back across the border and participate in, let's say, less constructive activities for money, that's a pretty good offer. And we have to be sure that we can provide an offer that is better than that, because otherwise what happens is that we continue in this ugly political rhetoric that we hear now all over the world about how young people are a threat and a risk and we have to protect ourselves from them. What rubbish. These young people are our failure. They're our failure. And they are the only source of human capital that will take Lebanon and countries like it forward. It's our decision to invest in these young communities all around this country rather than vilify them for being a security risk to our own sheltered communities and lives. Almost 4 out of 10 young people in Lebanon, just FYI, have either attempted suicide or thought about suicide. 4 out of 10, yeah? It's an unbelievable statistic, and you can often be inured to what's happening in those excluded, marginalized, isolated communities when you have an event like this. But I plead with you, please don't forget, it's not just about us here. It's about those 500,000 young people out there. I think I'm probably going to be wrapped up pretty soon by Natalia. But I want to share with you some opportunities that we have been trying to build in this ecosystem of which Lebanon should be so proud. There is so much to offer in this country. I often describe it as a pyramid, and most of my colleagues, they shake their head because they don't like this pyramid analogy, but I'm going to go with it anyway, yeah? All those young people who have been out of school, never finished primary school, no hope of getting into secondary school, university, I mean, forget that forever. We need to catch as many of those as possible through a non-formal system. And what we mean by that is that so many of those young people are not ready to be plugged in to all the opportunities that you guys are plugged into. We need to graduate these young people who have been on the periphery for so long. So this year alone, with many, many partners, with contributions from many, many donors, private sector slowly starting to get involved, we aim to offer 100,000 of those 520,000, so let's say 20%. It's not all of them, but it's a start. The opportunity for some really substantive vocational education and training, often non-formal, often not in a school setting, not in a university or an institution, but out in the community as a first step. And when we talk about inclusive innovation, and we see what's on offer around here, again, I can't stress enough, for that 15-year-old girl from Arsal who was just about to get married, for her to come to a community center and sit with a group of other young people and start to throw around ideas about what she would like to do with her life and identify a path for how she can make those ideas happen, that is an unbelievable innovation for that 15-year-old girl. It may be nothing to us, but for her, it's a life-changing opportunity, life-changing opportunity. And what we have tried to do is build a pathway from that 15-year-old girl's circumstances, graduating all the way up to increasingly more, let's say, sophisticated, contemporary learning opportunities, whether they be digital skills training, whether it be even social entrepreneurship, whether it be in an innovation incubator where that training can get more expert, let's say, specialized, and then referring those young people as they've graduated up the chain to accelerators, of which there are a number represented here today. That pathway is critical for us, because if we focus only on that part of the ecosystem that is at, and excuse the terminology again, at the top of the pyramid, we will neglect to engage the most excluded and the ones who have unbelievable potential, both to advance their own lives and their own prosperity, but also the health and well-being of their own communities. The last thing I would like to say in terms of this whole pathway and referral architecture, which honestly is still being built, because we've never done it before like this. Yeah, this is the first time, and we're learning as we go, and we would love for all of you to be part of this with us, is the whole idea of mentorship. I saw someone with a t-shirt before saying mentor. I was nearly going to grab them. The missing thing that is so often the case in so much of this youth innovation, inclusive innovation, is that we think provide the tools, provide the space, someone will come and they will self-learn and no further support is required. And what we've found is, in fact, that the value of positive mentorship cannot be overstated. We're very fortunate that we have now started to gather a little bit of a critical mass among academia and private sector who are ready to sign up themselves and all their colleagues and employees to be mentors of young people here in Lebanon, either physically, perhaps someone wants to come on a sabbatical or during their Christmas leave or whatever it may be, and be paired up with a young person. Perhaps it's someone who can't give that time, but is willing to be a mentor remotely, more on a, let's say, inspirational level, and everything in between. But that opportunity for a young person to engage with a successful professional with solid experience, even someone who is at university, maybe doing a postgraduate degree, is an unbelievably valuable opportunity for that young person to see something else, to be exposed to a worldview that if you're living in Wadi Khalid and you're a 15-year-old girl, you will never have the opportunity to have. You will never have that interaction with a successful entrepreneur who's based in, I don't know, San Francisco or Boston or somewhere else. So bringing these two worlds together through this idea of mentorship for us is the vital missing piece to ensure that the two worlds actually come together and are not in their own separate bubbles. And maybe on that note, that would be my call to action, because I can see you now standing on the stage. Yeah. The call to action to everybody is to spread the word. If you or people you know or organizations that you're connected to, whether they're public or private, it doesn't matter. if you're interested in being part of this movement to engage and mobilize these 520,000 young people who have the world to offer and just no way to be heard, get in touch and we'll be happy to speak. And thank you.
Before you guys leave, we still have a little Q&A. I know you gave me a question that I should ask, but I have a completely different question. So you said all these all these children are their current stage is our fault, all of our faults. If I'm sitting now here, what should I do? What can I do to help it? Not a big organization, me, Natalia, a person. What can I do to help these children around the world?
So, yeah, it's our fault in a collective sense, if I can clarify. I mean, we certainly have individual responsibility. That's my personal view. But we also have a collective responsibility as a plugged-in, affluent community to ensure that those bridges are built. What can you do as someone maybe on your sofa at night thinking, oh, I'd love to do something, but what the heck, where do I start? There are already many organizations that are working in this field. There are large international NGOs. There are incredibly resourced and networked Lebanese civil society organizations like LOST, like Mouvement Social. There are literally dozens.
So I don't have to start my own organization to actually help?
You do not have to start. There are opportunities to bring to the table whatever it is you're willing to offer, whether it's an idea, whether it's a financial contribution, whether it's your time. There is a platform for you. And I would encourage that a starting point, if I may, would just be to get in touch with Unicef. We have an incredible network of unbelievable partners that we can connect and refer people to, because it is true. It's hard to know where to start. There's not one phone call, one number you can make to say, how can I get in?
Well, now I can call you, right?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm not even on Facebook, but you can call my colleagues, that's for sure. No, by all means, that's how we can do it. You don't have to invent something from the start.
So I could just tell you said that I didn't call you beautiful. I think the work you do is beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think this was really inspiring. So I think one more round of applause for Luciano. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, really.
And guys, this stage is now closing. The Steve is here, and it's going to start on the main stage in 30 minutes. Thank you again.
Thanks.
That was awesome.
Thank you.